Today we have a very special occasion and very special guest. We are honored to have Mr. Kevin Hay and Mr. Ergin from Deepmotion. And maybe I'll let you introduce yourselves as well to the audience and say a few words about what Deepmotion is and just a few words about your tool that you're developing.
Sure. This is Kevin He. Hi, DJ, and it's our pleasure to join the podcast. So I'm CEO and founder of Deepmotion. Deepmotion, we create motion intelligence technology, and we use motion intelligence to build products and service to help connect people, entertain people, and make the CG world more content. So we started Deepmotion about 6 to 7 years ago. Myself has been working in game industry for quite a while, starting at Blizzard Entertainment as an engine developer of World of Warcraft, and then worked on, and then I moved to Roblox, worked on user-generated content for gaming, and also worked at Disney for a while. So after a long time in the game industry, I found rendering and the graphics has achieved to a very high fidelity stage. You can render spores at details, and it's very impressive. However, compared to rendering, animation is still lag behind. We still see uncanny valley in CG film. It still takes tremendous amount of effort to create AAA quality of character animation. So that's one thing inspired us to start Deepmotion. How can we focus on how can we create lifelike motions from procedural techniques that includes physics simulation, that includes AI, and algorithm generated movements. So that's how we started. The first thing we built is a physics simulation engine that will simulate articulated character structures like bone, muscles, joints. So all these under Newton laws simulation, we can then generate some realistic interaction between the character and the environment, and also create organic movement for the characters. And after physics engine is done, we evolve into using AI and deep learning to further enhance the motion diversity and how real it feels. So that's how we gradually evolve. Today, we focus on using deep learning based on physics simulated environment to create digital agents that can move around, that can demonstrate natural behaviors when it interacts with other environment and subjects. So one part of the technology, we call it perceptive motion brain, that is used to build the currently launched service. We call it Animate 3D, that will convert video to 3D animations. And yeah, that's how we started. We are continuing working on generative motion brain, which is another part of the motion brain architecture that will focus on generate new motions. So yeah, that's just quick history of how we get here today.
Yeah, you've used the two terms, AI and machine learning, deep learning, and usually I've seen like people or heard people using these two interchangeably, and laymen like us, for example, finding hard to really see the difference between these two, and these are not exactly the same thing, right? Or is this like really to be used?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. Yeah, I think everyone probably thought about the difference. They are interchangeably used in many places. So my way to understand AI is the goal, and machine learning is the way to achieve that goal. So in general, we are tackling a problem and to let machines to master artificial intelligence through the learning from human. So we teach a machine how to mimic, how to master skills that we human can demonstrate. And eventually they achieve some level of artificial intelligence that can help us do a lot of things. So that's the way I look at it. But, we can mix the terminology in different contexts. It's just they are two aspects of the same thing.
Mm-hmm. I'm just wondering. You said that your goal is like making the CG industry more content with the tools that you provide, and I'm wondering, like what kind of audience is the Animate 3D mostly targeted to right now? Is it like more to a general audience of I don't know, people wanting to have their avatars online, or is this like also targeted towards more professional uses, like for example game development or film production? Or is this like too early to really adapt that into more professional pipelines, or is that like just around the corner or already suitable for these kind of uses?
I see. So we saw a lot of interest from game developers, animators, people working on media projects, be it advertisement or a social media post or marketing content. So Animate 3D has been used by all these professionals and hobbyists to create content quickly. So I think one huge advantage we bring to the content creator community is that you can access the technology so fast and so quickly with almost no cost or very low cost. So you can just shoot a video of yourself or find stock video online, and instantaneously you can convert that into 3D animation. So that lower the entry barrier to animation creation to very low. If you can play with video, if you can capture interesting footage, then you can convert it into animations. So we think this initial adoption will be game developers, small to medium size studios, and also professionals who are focusing on more like using content to convey a message or for communication. And eventually this will evolve into professionals who work on AAA content. I think today, keyframe animation and traditional motion capture are still the primary method for AAA character animation. Right? However, as we see more and more studios using Unreal Engine and this game environment or other game environments to do storyboard, to block out the basic animations, to plan for the plot, for all those stages, Animate 3D is a perfect tool to speed it up. So right now, if you do a storyboard of how the characters interact with each other, how the plots involve, you could easily just find some reference videos or shoot some video clips yourself, and then use Animate 3D to convert them into quick 3D animations. I think as we keep improving the capability of AI-based mocap, this tech will be gradually adopted by AAA content creation as well. And that will be a process I think that will be coordinate effort between the technology developer like us and also our users and the community. We keep getting feedback from our user base, and that's the source for our inspiration and also help us to improve the tech continuously. The goal is one day we really don't need we really don't need heavy gears or any gears at all, hopefully, to create motion capture. And we have a great tool to create a lot of animation content. At least we use that to scale up our productivity and give us ideas and give us raw material to work on.
Yeah, and DJ, sorry, this is Ergin. Just to add to Kevin's thoughts there, I think we have, as Kevin said, Animate 3D is easy to use service where you can turn video into animation. So on its surface, in terms of your audience question, of course, it opens it up to the rest of the world, right? I mean, you pretty much just need a computer, a web browser, and, either, shoot your own video or find videos, and you can create these animations. So on one side, it's easy to use, and that is a broader audience. However, the flip side to that is that we've actually built in a lot of controls that are very specific to that core animator crowd, the core game crowd, and the professional 3D artists and technical animators. So for instance, we have settings, for instance, called foot locking, right? Where you can actually control, there's 4 different settings to it, auto or off or on, never, things like that. And, if you have animations where maybe you're swimming, you don't want any foot locking, you can disable it. If you have a fast dance where there's lots of foot touching the ground, there's various modes that will help you with that. We have other features and settings such as speed multiplier, smoothness settings, and other things that we have both available and in the pipes coming soon. So just to add to what Kevin said, that we definitely designed some of our controls, options, and settings for that more advanced animator crowd and 3D artist crowd, but the service itself is very easy to use.
Yeah, that was generally my impression when I tested it out and created like my first video about Deepmotion service. Like it's half a year from now, and it seems like it's already has developed so far in this short amount of time. Like you introduced the new face tracking right now in alpha, right? But I already tested made my first test, and it's looking very promising. I mean, about what you said about regarding the animator's workflow, it seems like you are kind of like bridging this gap that was very technological, doing the animation stuff, which animators kind of did that all the time, like making reference footage for their animation, just for reference, just for checking whether their animated movements are realistic. And right now it's kind of like your technology is doing that for the animator, or in the future it will be probably even more accurate and like closing this technological gap between the creator and the artificial creation, the animation.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, every day we try to, we're shortening that gap and making it smaller. So yeah, we're trying to, we release these features such as, face tracking and foot locking and some of the more advanced controls to satisfy and kind of adhere to that more technical audience, because that's probably a little bit more than half, or, there's a lot of technical people using our service. But then just like you said, yes, we still want to keep it, accessible and easy to use for the masses. And yeah, we work on that quality gap, daily, hourly, and we think that window is getting smaller and smaller every day, that, hopefully, pretty soon Animate 3D can be the standard for creating AAA animations.
Right. So yeah, DJ, you are exactly right. I think we started let our users use Animate 3D to do rotocopy, right? So now you can use AI to do rotocopy instead of doing it manually. The advantage is that first of all, it generates 3D result, so it's easier to it's okay. I should put this way: it's easier than a 2D video to use. If you purely if you do keyframe animation from 2D video, you can't really rotate the camera to side view to see how the depth, how other motion work. But with Animate 3D, you can create a 3D version of that movement encoded in the 2D video. So it's much easier to use that as a base animation to work on, and so you can polish it to make it perfect in the later of the process.
I wanted to ask, so from what I saw, Deepmotion's kind of like the deep fake, but for motion, right? I wanted to ask, like, how does it work? Because it looks like you input a video and it'll make motion from that singular video. Does it work similar to how deepfake works, where you feed it more information and it can produce a better result? Or kind of like a 3D scan, right, where you give it a couple pictures, it looks pretty janky, but then the more information you give, the closer and closer you get to capturing what you have, right? Is that how does deep motion work? Does it work similar to deepfake?
So we definitely leverage deep learning pipeline, similar to deepfake, but different in the actual architecture of how we build the network, how we train it. So you were right. In general, for deep learning based approach, the more data, the more ground truth we feed to the machine learning process, the better of quality. In general, we can think of it as a process of teaching a digital human to learn how to perceive motions from the external world. Basically, you have a lot of reference data, and you have a lot of mappings between the image, the pixels, and the 3D version of that movement. So then you can employ this computer vision technique to build a perceptive neural networks to recognize where your body parts are and position them in 3D space. However, our approach is beyond computer vision. As I mentioned, we started the company as a physics engine developer. So we started a project by building an articulate physics engine for multi-joint characters. So we fully leveraged our physics simulation to enhance the quality of the result in the movement. One example is that we have a feature called physics filter in the Animate 3D pipeline currently. If you turn it on, it will do a physics simulation pass to filter out some rough motions and to remove self-clipping between body parts. It also makes the movement in general more physically feasible. So that's one feature as an example to show we use simulation technique to enhance the quality of the result. So in the end, we cannot only rely on computer vision technique, although it's an important component in our pipeline, because from the traditional vision technology, you can parse out pixels from image to get a pretty accurate 2D position of your joints, of your body parts in the image space. But 2D to 3D is a huge leap, right? It's hard to get depth information from pure pixel recognition algorithms. In order to do that better, we provide a unique technology. We built a unique tech pipeline to use physics simulation also as a prior to guide the recognition path, so that we can fit the result movements to a physical model that will be physically feasible, and it will be compliant with it will collide and it move around under physics So it's more compliant movement in the environment. So to your looking back to the original question, I think it's closer to deep fake than to the pattern matching kind of pure algorithmic technique. However, we added important aspect to deep learning framework in the sense that we adopt a simulation-based environment and use that environment to conduct a deep reinforcement learning, and together with this general, deep cognitive pipeline to achieve the best goal. So I think this is the start of the journey. We saw a lot of progress. There are a lot more we can improve to make this whole vision coming together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so regarding the directions where you're planning to move the tools forward, I wanted to ask, are there some specific features that you have in your roadmap? Like, for example, we've had questions under the video I published regarding the body tracking, and immediately there were questions about face tracking. Like, these were the most in the comments, and you are definitely ahead of this and already released the alpha version of that. And people were also asking about fingers, like generally advancing the same thing, just in a more accurate way. So fingers. And I wanted to ask about also about maybe non-humanoid characters like animals or maybe multiple characters. Are these somewhere in the near future, or maybe not in the scope?
That's exactly. Finally, we launched the face, so that's a good first step. So face with body is more complete. Then we are evaluating a lot of new feature and a lot of new feature requests from the users, including everything you said, hands and finger tracking, like multi-people tracking, animal tracking. So each of these domain is actually significant, a new area of the product. I think for finger tracking, finger and hands tracking is a natural expansion from the current tracking architecture. I think it's a matter of time. We will provide all the. I think we will provide the tracking for comprehensive full body movements. Hands and fingers are important parts of it. Since we still are in the stage to plan out what are the next step features, it's a good time we can study user needs and requirements closely, like for finger and hands tracking, to what level of details we need, right? Because the level of details we need will determines the dependency of the technology. And we know there are a lot of finger tracking hardware. You wear gloves, you can attach different tags dots on your finger to track it. There are also leap motion and other techniques based on depth camera, and you need to place your hands really close, right in front of your face. So but from Deepmotion point of view, we're always thinking how can we do motion capture from any video. So we lower the requirement to zero if possible, or the minimum we can. And we do not want to build restrictive feature, so you have to get certain type of hardware to work. So our ideal vision for AI-based mocap is that you don't really need anything you need your observation. Right? You still need to maybe a video, but you don't need any external device to track it. So in terms of finger or hands tracking, we are still designing and discussing what is the what is the goal, what is target function for the tracking. Do we need to track details of every joints moving in 3-degree freedoms? Every finger joint. I mean, there are a lot of them, right? 20 to 30 joints in your hands. Or like some other vendors, they track gestures at high level, but maybe just a few gestures are not enough. And so how to strike a balance to fit it in the pipeline? And that's the key question from design point of view. We are seeking for the answer or considering that.
I wanted to also ask, like you said, about the tools that you need or don't need to, like extra tools for the motion capture. Yet there probably are some best practices to prepare the footage that you use. There are some general tips on your website how to prepare a footage for the algorithm to do its best to perform at the best quality. I was wondering whether there are some things that should be like in focus, maybe regarding the lighting or how or the lens that you use. Does that matter at all, or maybe the frame rate that you record? Does this have an impact on how the algorithm handles the video footage and prepares the animation?
Yeah, definitely. So we published a few guidelines about video capturing to generate optimal result. In general, we prefer a fixed or stationary camera to be used to capture the video. The main reason is that when we train the perception pipeline for this tag, most of the data we use, they are videos captured from stationary cameras, right? So that's a first requirement, and we have other requirement like include your full body in the viewport when you capture the video, and have a good contrast in colors between the foreground, between the subject and the background. So all these are, I would say most of these are common sense when you do photography, right? You want to have good lighting, you have good contrast, but the difference is it's less artistic than photography. Photography sometimes you want to do blur or special effect, but for motion capture, we prefer more standard settings, fixed lens, clearly in focus subject, the foreground as close, clear as possible. The background, some people use green screen, but it's not necessary. However, a less cluttered background definitely help. And we just want to avoid the AI to get confused that, sometimes it can mistake an object as a person, right? So if you have an oil painting with a person in the painting as your background, it may confuse the AI to think, who is the person, who is the actor to capture, things like that. But saying all these requirements, our goal is to remove those requirements one by one if we can. We had some initial success already. Like first thing we remove is full body requirement. And with one of the recent updates, we now support upper body capturing as well. So you could have upper body capturing, only includes head from your head to the waist, probably just like a portrait shot. Right? And we still, I think we can still capture useful movements from half body footage. We generate some placeholder lower body movements that kind of matching the upper body. But for upper body, we're trying to generate a stable capture for it. So this, in a way, lower the requirements. So you don't have to use strictly full body video. But full body video always produce the best result. But if you only have half body available for a number of reasons, maybe you don't have enough space in your workplace, maybe that's just the way a historical video was shot. There's no way to travel back in time and modify that capturing. So now you have more flexibility to capture it. Another requirement we're working on relaxing is the fixed camera requirement, which is still definitely a recommendation. But through some recent updates, we added more this multi-terrain height support. We also added stronger foot locking technique. So from all these heuristics like foot locking, like automatic sensing of where the ground is, from all this supportive tech, we can sometimes infer where the camera is. So even your camera move a little bit, or in some cases is following the subject, we still can produce some useful capture. Sometimes it looks good. Sometimes it doesn't look ideal still, but we're working in this direction to relax that. So if you have some camera shake, for example, if you have some panning or zooming, it probably just work fine. So that's our goal, is to remove these guidelines gradually. But before we achieve that final goal, we still recommend to follow, especially for beginners, we still recommend to follow our video guideline. Full body capturing, fixed camera, good contrast, foreground, background. As we are progressing with more development, we like advanced users to try out some of our these advanced settings. Besides the full locking, ground detection, and half body support, we're also going to opening up more kind of this filtering settings. So you can sometimes you can balance between smoothness and detail, right? But we're trying to provide intuitive control to advanced user to also kind of adjust that. And with more and more advanced settings, we hope we can provide a wider support for our users' needs. If you are beginners, you just started, just use the auto settings everywhere. It's like a camera. It's like in autofocus mode. You point and shoot. It should work. That's definitely the common denominator of all the use cases. However, we are adding more professional tools and settings, like Ergin said earlier, to allow professionals to provide, to produce more professional quality results by adding your own control and the insights into it.
That I kind of like this approach, and this general trend in the industry that it seems like some tools are kind of more accessible to like everyday users. And I've heard like one indie film creator, Ian Hubert, quite famous on YouTube in the Blender space. He's doing like a lot of VFX and movie production on an indie level, and he said like he introduced some techniques using free tools available, and was able to create like sometimes almost Hollywood production level in a kind of home environment with all those tricks and new technology available. And then he just found one technology that was kind of countering this trend, which is the virtual sets, and that require these large displays of on set to shoot in virtual environments. But this technology provided by Deepmotion is kind of in this trend of enabling you in your home setup even to produce something nice, even if you don't own professional expensive gear yet. You can do so much more. And I wanted to ask about the limitations of that technology. Do you see like the limits in what these kind of solutions, like the AI deep learning solutions, can solve, like the problems that they can solve, or is it like just a matter of time? I've heard like people saying that, for example, I don't know, UV unwrapping is kind of too hard for this kind of technology, but at the same time, I've seen the AlphaGo movie where people were sure that the Go game is just too hard for that kind of machine, but it seems it was just a matter of time.
Yeah, I think AI is very good at removing technical complexity from the art creation pipeline. And besides AI-based animation, I think if we talk about general scope AI-based rendering or deep learning-based rendering and texturing, rigging, modeling, all these aspects, I see that I think the quality from all these AI-based approach get improved every year very fast. The limitation of AI is that I think in general AI is still based on machine learning from human. So I think the reason AI is so good or produce stunning result is because we human first created raw materials or raw content in the first place. Then we trained AI to mimic what we did. And the AI is very good at assimilating a massive amount of experience, skills, and knowledge in a digital form. And then it can spit out combination or derivative version of what we can create, right, as human. So I think the advantage of using AI tool, it can help us to scale up. It can help us to scale up. Like we can produce maybe 1,000 times amount of content than before in a limited amount of time. However, if you look at the variety and the authenticity in the content, it doesn't automatically scale up. It depends on how much raw creativity you put into the training data. That will decide how good the quality of output. So I think I think AI is more about a tool to help user to unleash your creative power. So we still rely on humans to generate unique and fresh content, and then the AI will be used to add a lot of variety on top of that and create derivative results. However, if one day we stop feeding the AI with fresh content, the progress may stop. So I think that's a limitation. I hope we don't stop create, because AI can right now automate a lot of process. As long as we use that as a scale up tool, it will help us produce more interesting content. But I think my point, it will not just automate the process; it will speed up the process.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I've seen also the trend of generally creating tools like procedural modeling, these kind of workflows that are being widely adopted by the industry because of what you said, like the ability to scale up the creation process, especially in the game development. It's important that you can create a lot of iterations or versions of a specific asset or in generative creation of landscapes, whatever, of this kind of technologies. Do you think that AI will also maybe automate the preparation of these kind of tools as well, like creation of assets or level creation in game?
Yeah, that definitely. I saw some very good progress in terms of landscape generation or city street generators. Right. Actually, the city generator was not new. It was used in game many years ago. But at that time, it focused on very very regular pattern of the streets and layout of buildings. AI is very good at generating repetitive patterns and make the content seemingly endless. However, like I worked at Blizzard on World of Warcraft before, right? The World of Warcraft is a massive virtual world for gaming, and all the content involved was handcrafted by artists, by level designers, and that provides the very fun gameplay. However, it also super time consuming, and it's a heavy creation process to create a massive digital world like that. But later we see games, as I mentioned, you can procedurally generate city and streets. And recently, there are also games leverage deep learning to generate in the wild scenarios, landscapes. The question is, can we replace the manual crafted content with procedural content completely? I don't think so. I don't think it will. It definitely won't completely replace manual creation. But I think it will help create a lot of derivative content. It will help create different combinations and different flavors. If you look at landscape generator out there produced from deep learning pipeline, you'll find it is interesting, but after a while, you may see some. I think we as humans very sensitive at originality. You can still tell there's some repetition, there's some pattern going on. That's why after a while you may see it feel maybe not as authentic as real content. So I think we should use it in the right extent that can multiply the amount of content and productivity we can produce. However, we should use hybrid. I think we should feed it with enough raw content, that represent true creation, so the AI can do a better job to scale it up.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of the conversation we had with Erin Woodford, Erin Dale. We were talking about the procedural workflows, and he kind of mentioned the procedural generative design as not just a tool for speeding up the workflow, but also as kind of like a partner in design, because you can set up some rules, generate forms based on some formulas, and then it kind of gives you fast iterations of possibilities, and then you get to choose which direction you want your design to go. So probably the AI technology could be used the same way, like produce possibilities, and then we get to choose how to guide that in the original way. Like we are also discussing tools like Art Breeder, which generates automatic artworks based on some input constraints. And what you said was kind of true, that you can see the patterns, and you kind of subconsciously can detect that it was generated by an AI algorithm. At least for now, it's still this uncanny valley, but it's possible to differentiate whether it was created by a real painter or just AI algorithm.
Right. I think in the physical world, there is a term called entropy, right? So entropy is the amount of information or amount of energy contained in the subject. So I think the regional content is like high entropy content. There is a lot of details, a lot of regional layers in the content. But as you can then use AI to simulate original content and rehash them and generate a derivative result, or even use algorithm to further morph them to generate new content. But the more, I think the more you use AI, the entropy will lower. The entropy become lower than the original. At some point, if you don't infuse new, fresh content in it, the procedural pipeline will generate zero entropy content, which will be just 0 and 1. It's not interesting anymore. But I think the art is really how to balance that to maintain the right entropy level in your content, and still use a procedural technique to present every aspect of that content and every combination, any way to derive from it. That's what AI and procedural algorithm is best at.
I wanted to ask about that earlier. So you mentioned that you worked at Blizzard before, and that a lot of the animations in World of Warcraft were handcrafted, right? And then we know that as games got more complex, cutscenes and animations, instead of being handmade completely, they'd go into motion capture, right? So I was wondering if where does Deepmotion go in the future, where we know that you can make animations based on a single video? Do you think it can sort of compete or be an alternative to full motion capture studios with multiple actors acting in a scene where there's clearly overlap? Or do you think Deepmotion's going to be more focused on singular stuff like animating a character animation or animating a walking animation?
Very good question. So the core technology at Deepmotion we are working on is called motion. We call it motion brain. So motion brain actually has two parts, has two fundamental types. One type is perceptive motion brain that works like how the human eyes work. It basically perceives motions from external world and mimic the movements in the digital world. That is what we use in Animate 3D currently. That is what we use to perceive movements from videos or image and convert them into 3D animation in the 3D world. So this perceptive motion brain is good at copying motions or capturing movement. However, it won't generate new movements. The second type of motion brain is called generative motion brain. That's what we are actively working on. So generative motion brain will use high quality motion capture data or keyframe and animation as the ground truth. And then the AI will learn how to create transitions between these movements and how to synthesize new motion using the ground truth as building blocks. So this kind of generative motion brain is the deepfake equivalent for movements. So that's the second part of motion brain. That's the second type of motion brain we are working on. I think in the future, we'll use more of the generative motion brain to create authentic, lifelike animations for primary characters in the game that can hopefully match the quality of the keyframe animation or motion capture we use today.
Yeah, and I can actually just add on top of what Kevin says there. So for the original question of kind of comparing it to the traditional motion capture studios, we know today that those traditional hardware-based, studio-based solutions right now, they probably produce more accurate motion and movements, right? I mean, you have a human actually getting into a suit with, like 1,000 points on it and, highly accurate. And, we're not kidding ourselves. Like, we know we're not there yet. But as we were kind of discussing earlier on the cast, that gap, that quality gap, is really getting smaller every day, right? If you compared our service maybe a year ago to traditional motion capture, it's not even a question, right? It's just poor comparison. But compare us today versus traditional motion capture, and you know what? There's certain motions that you could probably get away with just using Animate 3D for. And these aren't just simple motions of walking or running, some more complex movements where there's, potentially lots of occlusion and, maybe there's a backflip or, somersaults, gymnastics, who knows. But, so to adjust, more of the original question, I think, we're not there today, but every day that quality gap is getting smaller. And I would even say we see from some of our customers that already today there are some, based on the situation, there are some movements, some motions where Animate 3D is good enough. We do capture all of the details, or at least enough of the details, sometimes all of them, that the results are good enough and they might be good out of the box, or maybe there's a little bit of polish that the animator or the artist will do before actually putting them into production. But the eventual goal is to disrupt the traditional mocap industry, which we think we are already.
Yeah, I think also like the advantage of your service being very accessible is that you have a potentially very big community that's going to use it. Like I've seen this as a Blender user, for example. Very big advantage of Blender 3D is large community that can provide feedback and people finding use for the software that wasn't even like intended by the original developers. The more people use it, the more use cases, the more feedback, the more possibilities, I think.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I find it interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're trying to democratize, the kind of content creation process, right? And more specifically, when it comes to 3D animations, right? So yeah, you bring up a great point. Accessibility is very important. That's why we kind of say, hey, like all you need is a web browser and an internet connection, right? And assuming you have access to videos, or maybe you can shoot your own video on your mobile device or mobile phone. So yeah, accessibility is a big part of it. And we keep talking about the traditional motion capture studios and not accessible, right? A physical location that you have to go to, and we haven't even mentioned the cost, right? We know that this is extremely expensive to do the traditional mocap if you want to do maybe the AAA studios, Lord of the Rings style motion capture. So yeah, we like I said, we're fighting that battle every day, and we're making it more accessible to the broader community.
Yeah, for sure. I remember when I was working with game developers, right? It's so easy to create environments that are realistic. We have Substance to create realistic textures and stuff, or Quixel. And then you get to the animation and it's like, oh, crap. we don't have any money to spend on either hiring a really good animator or getting like a mocap studio and renting it out and then, trying to record stuff. Like, yeah, this seems like a game changer. Especially I noticed that you guys got an epic mega grant, and with the upcoming release of Unreal Engine 5, there was this, I think, this physics system where the characters automatically like step on stairs or touch rocks. Is there any kind of technology of deep motion that's being integrated into Unreal Engine 5, or is that anything you guys are allowed to talk about?
I wanted to ask also one question, like maybe a little bit from our audience. Like someone was complaining about that the tool is very, very nice, and but why does it have to be another cloud service? Like there are definitely benefits of that, but some people find it very very nice to have every tool offline to be just able to use on their PC. Is that something that's kind of integrated into the nature of this AI engine, that it has to be in a cloud service, or is that just a choice of your company, or is that possible to use this technology or also offline as an offline software?
I guess I could start with that, Kevin, and if you want to add on top. I think so. So first off, just like you said, there are some benefits to using cloud, right? One of the major ones is our users don't even need to download any software, right? So for the user, for people who might ask this question, if it's available in other forms, I don't know if they're interested in a mobile app or, a desktop app, something they can run locally, which I think is valid. I think we do have some things on our roadmap geared in, towards those areas. One challenge we have, though, is that running in the cloud, of course, over the past 5-6 years, we've been working on this solution, as Kevin said, the underlying physics, algorithms and infrastructure that we have underneath, and everything, all the AI and everything we've built on top. So there's a lot of IP, right? And of course, one of the tricky things is really, locking down that IP, right? Kind of making sure it doesn't get out there into the world and people just start, abusing your software and, copying it everywhere. So it is just one thing that we have to be mindful of, that if we decide to build, a desktop app or a mobile app, IP is obviously a big, consideration for us. So having said that, especially when I hear you mention, maybe even a potential offline mode, I think we can still do things there, but in terms of the actual video processing, where we actually, take the video or images as input and turn them into animations. Like I said, that's kind of done, through our cloud right now, through, some proprietary, softwares and code that we have set up. But like I said, yeah, we are, having said all that, we are still, looking at building a mobile app. In fact, we've even started one, and, we do see some use cases there. Just like you said, we do have some customers in the community who are asking, for access, on, mobile devices or, other devices besides the cloud, besides using a web browser. So yeah. And yeah, Kevin, I'm not sure if you had anything you wanted to maybe add on top of that.
Sure. Yeah, I think Ergin shared some good comments on this regard. I think it's a valid question, definitely. But when we compare online tool with offline software, I think we need to look at how frequent we need to update the software and how early the technology is in the development. I think AI and deep learning in general is booming now, but still in the early stage. So because of this nature, the technology is evolving every day. If we check out how frequently we update Animate 3D, you will see that we sometimes do update every 2 weeks. Sometimes we do it, monthly, but it's a lot more frequent than traditional software release cycle. I worked at Cisco and traditional software company before I joined the game industry. So in 10 years back in the traditional software development industry, we're talking about a summer release and winter release, maybe 2 release. That's still pretty aggressive schedule, right? But nowadays we are working on these AI-based products or service. We're continuously updating the service. So I think leaning more towards a continuous servicing model is a software as a service, right? It's a SaaS model that can bring the software, can bring new features instantaneously, as we've done with our development and QA. There's almost no overhead. But if we go through the traditional download software approach, usually you'll go with a slower schedule, and you don't want to do 10 releases a year, right? You probably do 2 releases a year, things like that. Another benefit, as Ergin already mentioned, is easy of installation. So even though most of artists are savvy about NVIDIA graphics card, device drivers, game PCs, but there's still a lot of users, they don't want to deal with those. So every time we make a GPU or hardware dependent software, there's just there's a lot of support, and the details, it's hard to make it perfect.
Yeah, we know something about that, providing a cloud service for rendering. That's the more possibilities of hardware combinations. These are, it grows exponentially. Possibilities of errors and stuff like that.
Right. Yeah. So, but we are exploring all the options, including how to use maybe offline tools to speed up the process. But for now, it seems like a common denominator is, it's to require no hardware, like no specific hardware on the user side. So if you fire up a browser, upload the video, then you get some animation. This will minimize the entry barrier to use the technology. And hopefully we can also leverage the cloud computing to offer cost-effective solution to users. If we make it in software, we will need to charge for certain price for the software. But usually the sales model for software is that it's kind of high if you only, it is definitely high for one-time usage, right? You probably need to use it a lot in order to get back the investment. However, the flexibility of a cloud service is really usage-based. So if you use it for a summer camp project that due 2 weeks, you can just use exactly the amount of service that you need, which is maybe you need 20 minutes animation, which is a lot for your summer camp project. Then you can fire up a web browser and get it done. Versus if you're acquiring Maya or some high-end software, it's hard to justify that kind of budget or effort. So we're trying to make it very flexible. We have a free tier, but we also offer very affordable paid tiers. So in the end, we think it will save investment for the artists to do different size of projects more flexibly.
Yeah, that seems like as I sometimes call it, Christmas Day for 3D artists all the year, because more and more tools are just
affordable.
dropping, and they are more and more affordable for us, and it's just so much to check out, so much new stuff going on. Like for me personally, I'm a kind of like 3D journalist, and always wanted, like, I have a little bit of knowledge about animation and some experiences, but not very high skills on that. I wanted to learn that particular skills, and the Deepmotion was kind of like a nice jump start for me, like to get to play around with the rigging tools and all this stuff. And it was a very nice jump start for me. Like the experience was super pleasant. I was impressed by the results. I'm even more impressed by the speed of development of the tool. And generally, and I find today's conversation very, very promising and super interesting. So I guess we're already an hour, so we usually tend to wrap up the conversation at this point of time. So maybe one final question would be
actually, I do have one last question. So going over from the SaaS model, right? Your as a service. We know that Mexamo's more or less like the library for animations, right? And considering that AI, like you said earlier, it speeds up the workflow so fast. Are there any plans to like, I guess, compete against Mexamo or be another competitor in that area? Because yeah, like how we have Epic going, you getting over Quixel to go against Substance or Unreal Engine versus Unity. Are there any plans for something similar to that?
Yeah, we are thinking to build this user-generated animation platform using our technology, right? Because Animate 3D lowered the entry barrier to animation creation to so low that a lot more people who haven't been trained for animation can now create animation. So a direct result of this is we foresee a rich set of content being created on our platform that will bring us a lot bigger motion library to users to use. And we actually received requests quite a lot from our users. How can they share their animations? How can they trade with their peers? And we want to enable that and want to embrace it. So one of the project and next goal we are working on is to create this platform for users to access a large scale motion library and also help them to share their creation and potentially trade and sell their creation over the platform. And so I think the scale will be a lot bigger, magnitude bigger than traditional motion library, based on mocap. It's just because mocap technology doesn't scale, right?
Yeah.
You need so many human resource to create it.
Yeah.
So like every one of us in our audience, you can all be motion capture actors and
definitely, yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, yeah, that's another good point. Another day we did a project to create this parkour and the gymnastic animations. It's almost impossible, not impossible, very hard to hire a gymnast, especially under COVID situation, to do the performance for you, right? So, but luckily we found some really good stock video footage on internet, and we acquired that footage, and then we create very stunning backflips and skateboard motion, and parkour. And you don't need the subject doesn't need to wear heavy gears when they perform these dangerous, risky movements. So that's the kind of capability even traditional mocap hardware hard to match. Right? It's hard to deploy hardware anywhere on anybody in any situation. But now we lower the barrier to videos. If you can shoot a video, you can do it.
And stunts, for example, like very dangerous stunts could be replaced by this kind of technology, probably. Yeah?
Exactly. And talking about stunts, very likely we'll do some additional stunt motion generator kind of feature, down the path. And that may be one of the first few things generative motion brain can kick in. Like if you have subject unfortunately hit by a car in digital world, you probably cannot find the footage a lot on the internet, that person hit by a car. But you can find the person walking on the street in a normal condition quite a lot. And then using generative technology, you can not only capture from the video, you can also derive from that and let AI and physics simulation to generate the ragdoll, the heat reaction, and maybe the get up movements for you. So that will be a flavor of the next phase of this technology, where it's going. But I just want to mention it, for the stand, since the topic of stand will be a good area to, it's good area, good feature to add.
Great. Thank you so much for joining us today on this conversation. I guess we could probably talk even for another hour, or perhaps we could repeat that conversation, after some time when you develop some more features in the future, because it seems like super interesting to 3D artists. It's like I said, Christmas Day for the whole year, and thank you again, Kevin and Ergin, for joining us today. And we hope that our listeners will check out the Deepmotion service, or they have already checked it out, and they will find some nice tips and things to look in that conversation, and maybe share some thoughts or feature requests or any kind of ideas about this technology in the comments. We highly encourage that. And once again, thank you very much. And
thank you very much.
See you.
Thank you, DJ. Thank you. It's our honor to serve the community, and we want to realize the dream to democratize animation tech for all the CG artists in the world. And together with the community, we can achieve that dream sooner, I think. So we'd love to come back again in the future as we have new features and new development. And also, Annette actually is working on a promotion with a discount, 35% of the discount code. I don't know if Annette want to share with DJ in case the audience may be interested.
Yeah, absolutely. For our face tracking launch, we're doing a face 35 promo code. So you can go ahead and use that and try it out.
That's the Christmas Day thing. So thank you again, and just go ahead and test the face tracking and all the features, because it's super awesome. So thanks again, and hear you in the next episodes of CG Talks.
All right. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you so much.
All right. Cheers.
Cheers.